What has the Emio reveal taught us about Nintendo's advertising strategies, and was their Smiling Man tease a success or a failure on their own terms? What did they want to achieve? Why was their approach so unique? And what does this portend for the future of Nintendo advertising campaigns? I've been away for a few days with pre-recorded videos going out, but on my return, I am just beyond delighted to see that not only is the Smiling Man out of the paper bag, but that the Emio mystery solution is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best possible outcomes. A new, wholly original Famicom Detective Club title from the mind of incredible storyteller Yoshio Sakamoto. I was a big fan, particularly of The Girl Who Stands Behind, and I think Yoshio Sakamoto has so many strengths as a storyteller, as Metroid Dread fans can surely attest, and I am really delighted that the remake of Famicom Detective Club's first two entries in 2021 has led to a new title in this wonderful series. Hopefully this starts a regular franchise for Nintendo, as I think there's a lot of potential for games of this type to be a new strength of the mighty N. So now I think it's time to address a question which was raised by regular Nintendo Forecast commenter Stephen Fox during the first announcement last week. I'll read Stephen's comments in full because the post is spot on. It starts, "My only real prediction for this is that it's going to be released by the end of October and that it isn't being made by Bloober." Absolutely accurate. And while I was initially skeptical, I should say, about Bloober, the timing made me lean into it a bit more. I do still wonder whether this was a huge coincidence or whether there was any devious playing around with expectations at foot here from Nintendo, because I do think Nintendo were absolutely trying to create a bit of a mystery around this game, but we'll get to that in a second. Stephen's comments continue. "But when the dust settles, I'd be very interested to see your analysis on the techniques they're using to market this, because 15-second teaser for a new IP that doesn't say anything about the game other than imply a very specific style of horror, outside of Australia where you get more information due to their rating system requiring it to be given, I don't recall Nintendo ever doing this. When they've done teaser trailers for things before, to my recollection, it's always been for new entries in established IP. Hey, this thing you like? We're making a new one. Sometimes doing it way too early, as per Metroid Prime 4, but I suspect that was a decision made to make the announcement of a 3DS remake of a Game Boy game in the same press conference more palatable, given how the audience took to Federation Force. And by the way, I completely agree with this comment here, as it shows that Nintendo knows how to play the expectations game. It's also very prescient in that this was in fact for a new entry in an established IP and not something completely new. Of course, I've seen people arguing that this Emio trailer has failed the expectations game. I'm less sure about that, but let's keep on track for now. Stephen's post concludes, "Just general stuff. What do they do to market this? How it compares to their usual marketing cycles? What are the similarities? What are the differences? And is this an approach they're likely to adopt going forward, or does this feel more bespoke to this specific title that can't really be replicated?" So look, to me, the reveal matches the game. A new Famicom Detective Club game was not actually completely left field. Back in my forecast video for the prior Nintendo Direct, I put it as a 30% chance that we would get a new Famicom Detective Club title by the end of 2024, and last year I had it as a 50% chance that there was a new Majors collaboration with Sakamoto-san and the Detective Club team. The dots to join were simply that 2021's remakes seemed to do modestly well, and Yoshio Sakamoto is a senior Nintendo producer with a lot of latitude and a real passion for the project, so a 3-year dev cycle would make sense. I didn't put it any higher than 50% or 30% for specifically Famicom Detective Club, because it's not entirely clear how well the remakes did, and the dev cycle could easily be 4 or 5 years if it's not a priority project. Plus, of course, there's no reason that Nintendo needed to continue the Famicom Detective Club branding any more that they continued the NES remake branding for July's title, which feels very much in the vein of that series. They could easily have decided to make a spiritual successor that was not tied to a very niche decades-old franchise. The game was readily predictable, and just imagine if they had just come out and said, "Hey everyone, you remember those 2 games you didn't play? Guess what? There's another one." I'm exaggerating for effect, of course, but very clearly the news would have dropped like a stone, except to those people who were already attuned to be interested in Famicom Detective Club. It would have been a perfectly respectable part of a Nintendo Direct, but the news would have been utterly obscured by every other announcement. But the thing is, these are detective titles. Mystery is encoded into them, and so having a mystery at the heart of the reveal doesn't just make a huge amount of sense, but in many ways it is the only way to effectively market a game like this, because fundamentally this game is about its story, and you need a mystery with enough sizzle and enough intrigue to draw people in and make them want to solve that mystery. That is what these games are. Sakamoto's brilliant The Girl Who Stands Behind has a similar style of urban legend at its heart, and is as gothic and sad and brilliant as the name suggests. Nintendo knows Sakamoto's sound, the man behind Metroid Dread, has the chops to pull this off, although the fact that he's already trailing the ending as divisive does make me laugh, as he of all people knows what a divisive game can be based on the response to Other M. What they need now is to build intrigue. Intrigue in how this story ends. That's how you get people invested in a detective title. Now, it is a little conspiratorial of me to think that Bloober did Nintendo a solid by name-dropping some connection to Nintendo just days before they were releasing a Famicom Detective Club trailer, but maybe not that conspiratorial. Bloober got tons of press out of it, mostly good, although of course that's always a double-edged sword, and it highlighted that they are putting out Nintendo titles, and it got some interest in their new games. Meanwhile, Nintendo put out not just a cool tease, but a trail of breadcrumbs to keep people guessing and keep the hype up. Do Nintendo usually do this specific type of reveal? Well, they don't usually reveal mystery games, but check out how they did a Mario road trip around America to promote Super Mario Odyssey, and Pikmin-themed sandwiches to promote Pikmin 4. Nintendo evidently needs to demonstrate their titles in the best light, and that means finding out what the core selling point of these games are and how to best promote them to the general public. Now, Famicom Detective Club is an incredibly difficult one to market, I would think. The game is pretty much as niche can be. The remakes of the NES originals were highly priced, and although they were well regarded, they were also expensive, as is this one. I see Arlo has already sworn off it due to the price point, although I think he's making a rare colossal error in sleeping on this series. But to push a $50 price tag, you really need to have an air of prestige around your game. There is another concern here. The first two Famicom Detective Club games had a teen ESRB rating and 16 from PEGI. It seems that Emio the Smiling Man is significantly darker to push this into the 18 category. That is a problem in lots of ways. You have a product that is already potentially niche, and then you're pushing it out of the hands of perhaps younger teen detective fans whose parents might want them to cool their heels before buying a game with such a strong rating. I'm not sure what the younger demographic of the Famicom Detective Club games are, but given the small total size of the Famicom Detective Club audience, it's a risk. So, Nintendo needed to communicate to the audience that this is a different kind of title from the previous Famicom Detective Club games, a bit darker and more sinister, while bringing in the old audience and trying to draw in new players as well. I think this technique was a very effective way of doing it. Let's break it down. To help this launch, you have the timing, which I discussed in my previous video on this topic. Ahead of Obun, people in Japan are interested in spooky goings-on, and Nintendo have trailed a week-long mystery that is clearly designed to appeal to a broad audience. Now, did the revelation backfire and make people disappointed? Maybe for some. Certainly I've seen a lot of videos recommended to me that give Bolivian salt flats vibes. Frankly, to a degree that seems downright silly to me, all things considered. That's a risk they've taken, and actually in many respects, it just shows that there is an appetite for something darker by Nintendo, which I'm sure the company will note with some intrigue. But actually, they have given Famicom Detective Club a footnote of a franchise, a fairly high-profile launch as a result of this. Even those who are disappointed by the reveal are still talking about it, and therefore promoting it, and perhaps a few horror fans will be persuaded over by the tense presentation of the game. I confess I'm much more of a detective game person than a horror game person, so I was absolutely delighted. In fact, one of my favourite book series currently is the series of translated editions of the detective novels of the icon of Japanese suspense, Seishi Yokomizu, whose character Kosuke Kindaichi seems to be iconic in the same way it's in Japan that Sherlock Holmes is to Britain. Pushkin Press have been translating these at a rate of roughly one per year, and from the Honjin murders to the Devil Flutes murders, they are brilliant examples of a grand Japanese tradition of suspense and chills in a detective fiction context. So on Nintendo's own terms, they got the attention of people liable to be interested in this kind of thing in a big way. And if they overshot and got the attention of people who, let's face it, a Famicom Detective Club game was never going to reach in the first place, well, those people were still never going to buy the game anyway. So in a sense, it's a shame, but just shows that the advertising campaign was fundamentally successful. Now, the risk, of course, is they might have let the hype build up too much and actually provoked anger in response. But I think they've accounted for this in their strategy. This was a short hype cycle. It was first teased just over a week ago, and as we expected, it is out in August, and it's the last week in August, which is the only week Nintendo ever seems to put out August games in recent years since, as I discussed in the previous video, they tend not to be quite so active during the month of August. This is as close to the minimum 6-week hype cycle as you can get, and I think that's right for this title. Extended sizzle for the game far removed just wouldn't work for a title like Famicom Detective Club. In this sense, it's close to the reveal of, say, Ring Fit Adventure or Labo, which were given separate airspace from Nintendo Directs because they were kind of unique products. Is this a replicable strategy then? I definitely think if there are new Famicom Detective Club games, they will try to make their reveals surprising and left field in just the same way. It just seems like the best way to market a title like this. I also think it will be a lot trickier in future though to bury the lead, as people will be more canny about the potential of Famicom Detective Club after this, although give it 3-4 years and people may be in a position to be caught unawares yet again. I do think they will continue to have reveals that link back to the core experiences of the games they're revealing though. Usually a Nintendo Direct is the best location for a reveal like this, but that's clearly not always the case, and I would not rule out new IPs or niche products being given unusual advertising strategies if it fits the potential that they see in the games. Still, I'm not sure I can imagine a future Advance Wars title, were that ever to come to be, being marketed with a trailer for a military strategy quandary perhaps. And I have to wonder how much Yoshio Sakamoto himself had a hand in this specific reveal. After all, the game is his vision from start to finish, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if we find out that this reveal was his baby as well. Will it lead to other titles getting this treatment though? While Famicom Detective Club is especially niche, could the next Metroid title get a left field reveal? My hunch from what we know about the workings of Nintendo from interviews of insiders is that they will get very excited about the success of this campaign, analyze it to death, and mind map how to utilize the same kind of hype technique again, but then probably get bogged down and paralyzed by indecision and not really do it. This is why I think the game feels refreshingly marketed, and I think it's the presence of one voice in the room who can cut through the noise, and that voice of course is Sakamoto-san. Nintendo puts enormous trust and faith in its senior game designers. Until or unless Yoshiaki Koizumi or Kensei Tanabe decide to market a game in an unusual way, I don't see this block being broken. Nintendo remains a cautious and conservative company in many ways. Of course, Eiji Aonuma has a long track record of teasing new Zelda titles, such as with his talk about playing as a thief, teasing the Link's Awakening remake, and I can't believe these comments aren't coordinated with NCL in Japan. This is a great example of Nintendo giving latitude to their top talent to follow their nose, even in the field of promoting their own titles. I could definitely see a new Shigeru Miyamoto-led project or a new Koizumi-inspired concept being given original and off-the-wall advertising launches, but I think this is going to be something that is relatively unusual, if only because most types of games do not particularly benefit from having a mystery at the centre of their advertising campaign. It is something absolutely unique to the detective genre that you need the sizzle of a big mystery at its heart, and that, for better or worse, is what Nintendo have provided. So as the dust settles, I for one will simply celebrate. An absolutely fantastic series is getting a new entry with a creepy and intriguing premise, and it's out in barely a month. I wholeheartedly recommend that everyone check out the original 2 games in remake form, and I hope many of you are as hyped as I am. Check out these videos on screen, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.